The thing that intrigues me about the whole conversation is as human beings, it's so hard to have self-awareness, right?
Now, in finance, your superpower will help you make really good decisions or wise choices without you even knowing why you are good at it. But then, on the contrary, your saboteur or your weakness will lead you astray, and it can cause you to step into potential money missteps.
Everyone wants to talk about how the stock market's doing. Everyone wants to talk about,
Yeah.
the last, tweet President Trump sent out, or that the Dow's over 50,000, or, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, all that information is not as valuable if we don't know how to communicate it with each other.
Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up-to-date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Encompass More Asset Management LLC is a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tall Oaks Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Ducharme, and today I am joined by Melanie Ferreira, who is actually a CFP professional in South Africa and is zooming in today. We're recording here at 10 o'clock in Utah, and it is the evening where she's at, all the way across the world in South Africa. So we appreciate you taking time out of your evening to hop on and have a conversation. Melanie. Melanie and I connected because of the work that she's doing in the financial planning space and helping people in South Africa with the behavioral and psychology side of investing and dealing with money through the lens of this thing called a DISC profile, which some of the listeners might be familiar with. It's something that, I got turned on to, like 15 years ago, I want to say almost. And through my dad, he's always been kind of a big believer in this. And my wife and I took DISC profile assessments when we were first married. And one of the things that I really had internalized at that point was it's not a personality test. It's like a way of understanding the way that you communicate and make decisions, right? So enough about that. Melanie, why don't you, what I want to do is hear through your lens, maybe now that I've set the stage a little bit, help us understand what a DISC assessment is and the styles of communication and decision-making that people, tend to think in or deal with or communicate through.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share some of my insight and just the work that we've been doing on behavioral wiring and how that relates to money. So I think you've done quite a good introduction on me. So I'm not going to cover who I am and what I do. It is 7 p.m. where I am at the moment. So I'll soon be switching over to something cold soon. And I just really want to share some of the insights specific with regards to behavioral wiring and how that influences our financial decisions. So I'm going to refer to DISC profile today mostly, but no matter the behavioral tool that you use to determine your behavioral style type, be it Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, or the Genius U, the discussion boils down to the same thing. Our wiring influences how we engage and react with the world. This is something that has already been widely used in recruitment, leadership, development, client interactions. Our behavioral wiring affects pretty much everything that we do, from how we execute our work, how we handle our relationships, and to how we communicate and handle conflict. So historically, the relational portion of these assessments has pretty much been explored in full. But however, there's one element that it seems no one has ever explored, and that is how our wiring also influences our financial decisions. And that is the portion that I would like to be discussing today for you and for your clients, Brandon.
So when you refer to DISC, help us understand what's the breakdown of that and what are the different type of styles or quadrants people might fall into?
Okay, so maybe first off, if you are not familiar with DISC, this conversation will and might feel a bit foreign. So I will cover the full behavioral style types briefly today, but we won't go into too much detail of the DISC itself. So Brandon, I'll share a more detailed resource with you as well afterwards on the style types that you can maybe perhaps make available for your clientele. But what I want to discuss today is what impact your behavioral style has on your money. And it will also impact how you engage with a financial advisor, or in that case, any person providing you with services of a corporate nature. So let's quickly look at the 4 core behavioral styles that we get in the DISC profile. There are 4 core styles. The first one is the D, stands for dominance. These guys are known as the red energies. So they are the fiery and passionate ones. They are focused on results, they are fast paced people, and they are task oriented. They like to feel in control and they really dislike being vulnerable. These guys are all about the end result. Their priority for themselves and for others is to get it done now. These are our fighters. Then we get the I, that stands for influence, and these guys are known as the yellow energy. They are literally the sunshine in any room, yellow for a flower. They are the people focused, and they are fast paced. These are typically your party starters. They thrive on people, adventure, excitement, and building memories. Their priority for themselves and for others is to get approval. They really want and need to be liked and to shine. They are our energetic, persuasive personalities. They are great guest or inspirational speakers, and they are emotionally very expressive. These are our connectors. Then we get the S, that stands for steadiness, and they are typically known as our green energies. They are much like the mother nature. Um, they are people focused, but they are typically more slow paced or introverted. Their priority for themselves and others is really to get along. They like people, but more in a one on one setting rather than a group setting, as is the case for the I or the influence energies. They're, they are stable, they are friendly, dependable people, but they really like harmony and therefore they dislike conflict. These are our carers or our nurses, so to speak. Then lastly, we get the C, which is the compliance style. They are known as the blue energies, and they are the calm blue waters. So they are critical thinkers and they prefer accuracy over action. They are really task focused, but they are more slow paced and also introverted. Their priority for themselves and others is to get it done right. These guys are cautious, diplomatic, they like processes, and they dislike impulsivity or being wrong. These are our fixers. And now, here's the thing, due to most people being a blend of 2 or more styles, it can mean that you will see a more nuanced display of behavior and you won't see an outright style just pop out for one individual. For example, you might know that someone is a high D or dominant personality, but you also notice that they are really detail oriented and they are always fact checking and looking for data. And this is someone who really has a high C or compliance blend. So they will be a decisive dominant personality, but they would also need the data. So these blends explain why people who are both a high D can look and behave very differently from one another. I think it's important for us just to know that we all have these 4 styles within us. We just tend to lean toward one or the other, one or two a bit harder. We can learn to soften our style type approach. However, when under pressure or when we face a stressful situation, we often tend to default to our natural style, whether it's healthy, wise, or not. And that is the reason. The reason for that is that's where we feel safe to operate in. But that doesn't always mean that's the healthy or the wise way to react with whatever you are dealing with. So just a quick disclaimer here as well. DISC is, and you've already referred back to it, Brandon, DISC is a behavioral lens. It should not be used or seen as a way to label or box in someone's personality with a neat little bow. It's not a defining structure of who you are. It really just highlights your natural pull towards how you show up in a situation. So it typically measures our behavioral tendencies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the way that we're gonna. I think about it the way of like, how are we gonna make the decisions when the rubber meets the road, right? And
Yes.
so, help us understand what are the behavioral styles. Like how are these people? You've touched on the way that they generally think or focus or talk about stuff. How does that relate when they're thinking about money, investments, finance? And these type of decisions, like what do those processes or decisions or conversations tend to look like depending on the um, style type?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, our behavioral wiring affects how we communicate and so many other aspects of our life. And that's why also it really does affect how we invest, how we react to risk, how we process financial information and advice. And given that money is one of the most emotionally loaded environments that we operate in, even though some people do not believe that to be the case, you will possibly default to your basic behavioral style when you think and work with money, whether it's healthy or not. And that's why awareness is key. So I think I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, or whether it's different in the US than it is in South Africa, Brandon. But in our case, most financial mistakes are not knowledge mistakes; they are behavioral mistakes. If you are in an advisory role, you would know that, and you would have experienced this to be true. And actually, the data proves it that clients lose more money due to making emotional choices than in a market downturn, then or in a recession, than the market drop or the recession itself. Would you agree with me, Brandon? You find that to be true as well?
Um, I I think anecdotally it's commonly cited. I don't know that it's always it's not a hard and fast rule in practicality.
I guess
But
that.
it's a fair enough framework though to have a conversation.
So I think at the end of the day, it's not always just going to be one thing.
Mhm.
But this is something that we do pick up, that there are often much more, let's say this, someone who's not aware of their own tendencies might make more behavioral mistakes than knowledge mistakes. And I
Gotcha.
think certain fears will be more prominent for some clients than others. So that's why I've taken some time to explore how much of that can be attributed to the lens that we view the world through, which would be our behavioral style type. So when typically speaking about finance, these, the traps that we often see people make, the fear, greed, anxiety, those are just human financial traps. But our wiring determines which pressure will hit you first. And I think as someone's advisor or an investor, this is golden information to have. How you react under stress. Where does your blind spot sit? And because blind spots can be expensive, that is why this information really matters. So I want to jump into each style typically has a superpower and what they're really naturally good at, and a saboteur. Now, in finance, your superpower will help you make really good decisions or wise choices without you even knowing why you are good at it. But then, on the contrary, your saboteur will, or your weakness will lead you astray, and it can cause you to step into potential money missteps or step into a money trap. So for each style, we have a core emotional orientation, as I've covered a bit earlier. There's a predictable pressure response. I'll give you an example. I'm wired a dominant influence, so I'm a DI. And that just typically means that impatience is built into me. If nothing moves fast enough, my system gets irritated. So that wiring makes me really effective in business situations, typically where there would be no right or wrong decision, but there is a consequence to each. You need to make a choice based on trusting your gut, my ability to be okay with that, having the control to make those choices, to execute them, even if I don't have all the information, to just go with my gut. I can be a quick thinker, and I can think fast and make things happen. That really does count in my favor sometimes. However, with investments, this also makes me inherently impatient with anything that is boring and requires some time. So knowing this can help me counteract whenever I feel the itch on wanting to make my money move or grow faster in an investment that are meant to be long term. I find something that I can move and shake without causing myself financial distress. So I'll allocate a portion of my money to a move fast, lose fast bucket, and my losses and winnings will stay ring fenced and protected, from the rest of my well-being. So I think at the end of the day, every single one of those defaults will influences how we deal with risk, uncertainty, and authority. And that is what finance is built on, ultimately, on all three of those things. So if you want, I was thinking maybe we can quickly break down the superpower and the saboteur for each style type. We won't have time to go through all of them, but I thought I'll just cover at least one for each style.
Yeah, I think that'd be really enlightening.
Okay, so the first one, if you think of, let's start with the D, a dominant personality type. We already know that these guys are about results and not feeling vulnerable. So their superpower is being really decisive, being able to execute something and committing to something rather quickly. They can commit to something usually within the first 5 minutes. However, their saboteurs, or what will sabotage their money behaviors, is when they get restless and they want faster outcomes. Things aren't moving fast enough. The results aren't coming in fast enough. They do not consider enough data or risk when making decisions, and they might end up exiting or entering prematurely, just because of that itch that you can't scratch, like in my case. These guys have a core fear for a loss of control. They really need to feel that they are in control. Then when we look into the influence, the I style, these guys' superpower are really optimism. I've yet to see a depressed influence person. And this isn't the influencers on Instagram. These are their I style types. They are so good at seeing and seizing opportunities with everything in them. However, their ability to sabotage comes with the follow through. Follow through can really be lacking in an I style type once the excitement is worn off. They always want to chase the next best thing, the next trend. They tend to be pushing and pulling on good ideas or something that makes looks exciting and interesting, instead of just executing a consistent, disciplined investment plan. They can be an easily hyped or persuaded when it seems exciting and adventurous. For the core fear for an I or an influence style type is really just FOMO, the fear of missing out. These guys do not like to be excluded, and they also don't like to be restricted. Then when we move on to the steadiness, the S style, their superpower, almost opposite to the influencer, is stability. They actually thrive on something boring and stable. They can enter and stay in a certain position. If it doesn't rock the boat, they will love it. The sabotage here is, or their saboteur would be that they would typically delay change to preserve the peace and harmony, or to avoid conflict, even if the change is necessary for them. That loss of peace and harmony. Their core fear is really disruption, loss of harmony. It can be either with people, the harmony of people, or just rocking the boat in their environment or in something that is stable to them. Lastly, when we look at compliance, or the C energy, these guys, their superpower is precision. They are okay with delaying the process for as long as they have received and understood all the data that they've collected. So they are much more factual, and they will not be as easily persuaded by emotional hype. Their sabotaging behavior is typically hesitation. waiting for the right time, waiting for certainty. In 2 words, literally just analysis paralysis. They want to understand the information so bad that they won't necessarily make a bad decision. They will just not make a decision at all. And their core fear is really being wrong or getting it wrong. So that's always interesting for me once you have a blended style type to see how these then kind of interact with one another, you know?
Hey, it's no secret to us. We look at the demographics of this show. We know that a lot of you listening are actually other financial professionals and other investment advisors. We want to go ahead and invite you. If you're looking to do something different in your career, go ahead and reach out. We're always looking to bring on high quality people that understand how to do the planning process, align with our values, and are looking to deliver high value to their clients. Please just go ahead and reach out to us. You can get us on our website, ducharmewealth.com, and we look forward to talking to you. Have you found that there's a certain mix where a certain style type tends, like, do they work best with people like them that communicate the same way, or the opposite, you know, kind of opposing quadrant, or the ones next to them?
Interesting. I haven't really found I can't say that I found a pattern. To be very honest with you, sometimes you think that the personality style types that are closest to one another would work together the best. And then, so I don't know, in the consulting space, what we usually do is we'd give clients 3 numbers for 3 different advisors. And usually the one that you expect them to pick, knowing that they are maybe a D personality type and they might really like another D personality. And then they end up picking either the influence advisor or the very data oriented advisor. So it really depends. I think I won't say there's specific style types that work better together. I think it really depends on the external layers on top of that.
Hmm.
So shared experiences, and that's almost where the disc or the behavioral style type fades a bit. It would be more, is there a shared experience, or is there something that bonds them together that is a shared understanding? So no, I haven't seen that someone would pick someone exactly like them or the opposite to them. It really tends to be a mix. I think it really comes down to more of, do they feel that this person is on the same page as them? And that can happen for a number of reasons, right? Not just for your personality style type.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the thing that intrigues me about the whole conversation is, as human beings, it's so hard to have self-awareness, right?
Yes.
It's easy to be like self-critical, right? But I think just general self-awareness to say, you know, these are situations that I really have a hard time with. These are the situations I thrive in. You know, these are the things I'm good at. These are my challenges, and being really kind of honest with yourself that way.
Possibly
It's
because no
tough.
one's ever discussed it with us. I think if you've never done a disc profile or any temperament style or any kind of introspection sessions,
Mm-hmm.
you can do this. This doesn't get covered at school level. I don't
Yeah.
know in the USA, but we don't get a subject where they teach us about ourselves and how we think and why we have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So I think the core thing on self-awareness is you have to go actively search for it. And a lot of clients and advisors don't have it. Um, Only once you've really gone through that rabbit hole of, you know, signing up for a disc assessment and seeing how it helps, then you realize, well, the self awareness was just not something that anyone really focused on. And I think that's quite sad. And that's why I'm really trying to bring some attention to how much it can help not just the clients, but the client and the advisor relationship to have a really good understanding of, this guy probably isn't reacting this way because he doesn't trust me. This is just wired into his C personality. So I think there's a lot of uh, the awareness portion can go a long way. Just being aware, then you can almost work with any style type if you know what it is that they need,
Yeah.
what their core fear is, and to ensure that you address it.
Well, I think what's interesting about the disc profile is I have observed at this point, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people's financial decisions, and peeking through, the lens or pulling back the curtain on a bunch of different facets of their financial life. So, we don't in our practice just talk with people about their investment portfolio. We're more commonly actually talking to people about their goals, what they've done so far in their life, their estate plan, what documents they have, how they anticipate their legacy to look, how do they think about risk and insurances, and what's the behavior, and there's all these little things that you can see. Well, it's a lot. How do you view or think about taxes and administrative tasks around your finances and all sorts of these things, right? And what I found is typically somebody has had a number of really bad experiences where they just don't want to do a lot of anything in a certain space for a number of reasons they feel. But oftentimes there's one area where they have done well. And, so whether it's they have the right insurances already because they met somebody at insurance that just clicked with them and moved them to action, right? Or an estate attorney that, was able to help them get their documents done. And the thing that I always wonder is it really that they cared about that thing that much? Or did they just find that one person that their natural communication style was the client's natural communication style? And so it's not that they were particularly excited about that thing, but for, once somebody was able to connect with them and help move them to action because it was a data-driven insurance agent that provided naturally, because that's the way they view things, provided the data to the compliance person that said, oh, well, that's data I can make a decision on. That's what I needed. Okay, now I can go enhance my, insurance thing. But everyone else in the world is not talking to him that way. And so they just go I don't understand why I need estate documents. I'm not doing that. I don't know why I would pay thousands of dollars for that, or I don't know why I would do this or that. So they're just making no decisions, right? And
Yes.
So I think the DISC is not something that is we can talk about the money traps, but I think it's actually more broadly applicable to your overall life management, right? Of all of your decisions, right? And but it's not that you have to go find an attorney that is the same kind of DISC type as you in order for them to be a good attorney for you. If you have the self-awareness, Melanie, right? You can say hey, I'm aware that this is the way I like to be communicated with. And so if I got referred to an attorney or an insurance agent or a doctor or whoever, a professional I need to go engage with, and they're not communicating me to the way that I like to be communicated with, I can ask questions that are going to get the information that I want so that I can be communicated with, right? You can almost help coach somebody to communicate with you the right way if you have the self-awareness to know what it is you want to be, how you want to be communicated to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touch on something very, very important in terms of it's important for the client to know what they would need. But you said earlier, maybe someone would seek out their own advisor type. But I think it's more specific to they would seek out someone who, whether they are the same style type or not, who understands the client's style type. For example, I might be a DI energy, but if I am very aware of the client sitting in front of me, I will not speak to my own client style type of a D personality the same in which I would with a C. And it's not a thing of being a chameleon or, trying to blend in and be all things to all people. It's just making sure that the message lands for them. And it's about knowing that if I come in, let's say this, for example, I think a certain style type is easier for you to pull up if you are the same energy. So it's much easier for me to communicate with my own D energy. And it probably won't drain me as much because I don't have to think about it. I know that this guy receives the information in the way that I give it to him or respond. And, there's got to be a natural, good flow of, I come with hard facts. It's be brief, be bright, be gone. That guy's going to be happy. I just gave him the facts and he's out of the door within a half an hour. However, I can be a D, but still understand once I sit with a SC or a CS client in front of me, which typically is slower paced. They need some time to think over the decision. Instead of saying, okay, we've talked for 20 minutes, what do you want to do? You'll go, you know what, take the information home. This is what we've done. Take some time, think it over, and I'll give you a call in a day or two. So it's more just about the advisor as well, having awareness of who's sitting in front of them and how would they best understand the conversation. And now that you've touched on it, I'm going to jump around just to specifically what I commonly see with advisor misinterpretations and just their style communications where they would, almost turn confused after a certain meeting. Not understanding, did I misinterpret the meeting? I thought it went really well. And then this guy's turns out to almost look flaky. What happened? So I find that a lot. And it's interesting to me that a lot of the times, it's not always the case, but a lot of the times it really comes down to style communication. And, you misinterpret what's been said by how this personality would typically just react on a normal day. So I'll give you an example. I think for advisors who might want to know how to deal with each style, almost what seems to be baked into a client's response, maybe I can clarify a few things for them and for you that you might see each style do and say. That might be a bit of a decoding moment for you because I've seen this happen a lot and it helps advisors to understand this. So let's say, for example, a D personality. In a meeting, this guy would be extremely challenging. He would look like he's almost bullying and bulldozing you for answers. He seems to be doubting your competence and challenging your authority. But the real thing that's happening for them is they don't want to feel that they have no control. And what they're looking for is certainty. So do not mistake the fact that they are challenging you for the fact that they are doubting your competence, and they don't want to do business with you. It's more a thing of having to feel like they have the control and do not feel vulnerable in that situation. One I've seen come up a lot is the influencer, the influence personality type. So many people would say they just had a meeting with someone. They were so enthusiastic. They almost immediately signed the forms on the table. They were happy to do it. And when the client would then, or when the advisor would follow up in a week, the guy had already gone with someone else, or they just didn't send in the documents and they don't commit at all. So with an I personality, we have to remember that the enthusiasm wears off with time, so to be enthusiastic in a meeting does not mean commitment. It can simply mean that they are excited in that moment. And then you get the S personalities. These guys need harmony. So how they will typically respond in a meeting is a steadiness personality would be nodding. They would look like, they are hanging on your lips. They want to know everything that you're saying. They need information. They're asking a lot of questions. But nodding along doesn't necessarily for these guys mean that they are buying into what you're saying or your investment strategy. It can simply mean that they do not want to disrupt the harmony of the relationship or start conflict or discomfort by asking certain questions that they are still, they need information on. And then lastly, for a C personality, you would look at someone who might be probing for just laying all the questions on the table and asking for more data and more options. And it doesn't mean that this guy is distrusting. It can just simply be that need to understand. So I think very important for advisors is a meeting reaction does not always equal true commitment or even just true non-commitment, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
When both a client and an advisor understand their wiring, it actually benefits both parties. because that's why I am a massive advocate for both an advisor and a client who enters into a relationship to have this knowledge upfront about each other, because it stops that emotional friction from the beginning, and it actually just leads you straight to a structural alignment. And I think
Hmm.
what that does is, when a client has understanding of themselves, it also leads to great insight of their own by default. That, they would realize, oh, this is something that might work against me. And it can be something like, that's true, I often rush. So it would help you, with a deep personality. Or that's true, I tend to overthink. Maybe we can set a deadline for when we make a decision. Or I
Yeah.
often try to avoid conflict. So maybe let's set the meeting up and have the conversation, even if it makes me uncomfortable. Or I tend to have the tendency to just chase excitement. So let's automate something. So, that when the excitement wears off, that the debit order is still running, or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be. I think that can really change the conversation and a relationship to a healthy money experience.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that I think you can take this conversation, and you keep saying the word advisor, and I think you're insinuating, financial advisor.
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting here thinking, I keep thinking any advisor I would hire in my life for anything, right? Whether it's like the insurance broker that's playing that piece, but I'm, looking for advice and help from them, or, a doctor advising me on my health and health decisions, right? Um,
Mm.
Trying to understand the way that somebody communicates, I think would help me get to a place faster where I can make, good decisions, be comfortable, make confident choices, be receptive to good advice, maybe be aware or leery of stuff that's maybe bad advice, right? Or that just wouldn't align with me. I can be
That
quicker
too.
to discern that. Um, and it's a lot of it is about just understanding the communication style, so that you don't get in those situations and you might be getting really good advice, but say, that just didn't sit right with me. That kind of hurt my feelings. I don't like the way they said something, like I think that's the stuff that people experience, that it's a real detriment to them when, and so oftentimes you have people like that, D type personality, right? Maybe it's an attorney, and they're giving good legal advice and they're a really competent attorney, but somebody's like, that guy's a jerk. It's like, well,
And he
no,
feels rude.
he's just telling you exactly how it is, right? Like, and it's what you need to know. And if you understand that, hey, he's probably just a D type, communicator, and I'm an S type person that's not confrontational. He's not here. He's not bullying me. This person is not being rude. They're just trying to tell me the way that they know how. And so maybe I can look past that a little bit and try to get to the meat of it, and be able to get the advice and help that I need. And again, I think that applies to, like not just financial advisors or not just attorneys, but your doctors and the people around you, and really probably even dealing with people in your family and family issues and dynamics and
That's
friendships
right.
and all of this kind of stuff. I
Right.
think
And this,
it's applicable. So, I think for somebody that hasn't done it, there's ways to do disc profiles, I think for free online. Like it's a quicker, version that doesn't maybe give you as much analytics, but it's just maybe a quick way to see sort of where you land naturally, and like go do it, go Google it, find one that's, cheap, easy to, easy to
I
access,
think
or easy to get.
Truity is a nice one.
Okay.
That's free. It doesn't give you the reports, but it gives you the assessment. So it tells you whether you are a D or a DSC. So Truity, I found, is a very nice free tool.
Okay.
You won't get an investment report per se on your personality to break down everything, but at least you'll know what style type you are. So
Sure.
that's a good one to try out for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Like, there you go. Anyone listening, there you have the direct resource to, go do something at least on a preliminary basis and see if it is enlightening to you, right? Like, I think trying to have some self-awareness is always good. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time, Melody, to come on and talk about this. I think it's something that's generally under talked about, right? Everyone wants to talk about how the stock market's doing. Everyone wants to talk about,
Yeah.
The last, tweet President Trump sent out, or that the Dow's over 50,000, or, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, all that information is not as valuable if we don't know how to communicate it with each other. So
Yeah,
I
very
appreciate you
true.
shedding the light on that.
No problem. I think, you know what, most clients, I think, don't always realize that they are paying their financial advisors not just for the investment insights alone. They are really paying them to keep them from acting on their behavioral wiring that might sometimes lead them astray, in a risky or under pressure situation.
Mhm.
Because we pay our advisors sometimes, you know, I've heard the one guy saying, the markets are moving. Why aren't you doing anything? I'm paying you for this. And he said, you are paying me to do nothing. And I think sometimes that's really true in our possible missteps. There are times when you need to make changes, but if you want to be able to trust your advisor, it's good for you to know what typically worries, that makes you want to act a certain way. And an advisor is there to then help you understand what is a wise financial choice or what is possibly just a personality bias or a blind spot that makes you feel anxious or makes you feel we should get out or we should do something. And I think that's the importance of having a financial advisor as well, is they can help you avoid those money traps, so to speak, of your behavioral style if you let them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing all the insight today, Melanie. Thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to talking again soon.
No, sure. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.